Back over here with Stanley Hauerwas. Stanley, I want to talk a little bit more about your, you introduced us to your convictions about nonviolence there in that first segment. I first want to ask, though, if you think it's ironic that you have a somewhat belligerent, apparently sometimes profane, kind of Texan in-your-face personality who insists upon nonviolence as part and parcel of Christian discipleship.
Well, I'm obviously a violent SOB. And if I didn't tell you I was committed to Christian nonviolence, I might kill you. So by creating expectations in you, I have some hope you will keep me honest to what I know is true. Because you can't be committed to nonviolence as a heroic ethic that you can do on your own. You're going to have to be committed to being part of a people who will make you more than you are by the declaration of what it is that you think you need to be a follower of Christ, and hope that they will keep you honest to that.
And this is not some issue for you, but you speak of nonviolence as it's part and parcel of Christian convictions, basic Christian convictions.
Absolutely.
And how so?
God underwent what we deserved on the cross, taking our violence into himself, refusing to pass it on. That's what makes us followers of a God that would have us live in the world in a manner that witnesses to the one that makes life worth living, namely a life of truth.
Obviously, much American Christianity doesn't buy into that. I love the story about your cousin.
Oh, right. You mean Billy Dick?
Yeah.
Only
a Texan could have a cousin named Billy Dick.
Billy Dick, right? Billy Dick. I was raised a bricklayer. My father was a bricklayer. 5 brothers were a bricklayer, and I start the story with that because bricklayer's language is not noted for nuance. When you're laying brick, you don't say, "Pass me a brick." You just won't get it. There are other words you use. And Billy Dick was 6, and he had heard some of the words. And he was at Lakewood Methodist Church, and there was there in his Sunday school class there was a flannel board talk, and it was about the crucifixion. And Billy Dick suddenly realized that Jesus had been crucified. And with all the sophistication of his 6 years, he stood up and raised his hand and said, "Teacher, if Gene Autry had been there, the dirty SOBs wouldn't have gotten away with it." Now, I think, that's pretty much the way we think about it. We just need to make sure we're Gene Autry, and that will somehow make the world more just. I think that as part of that kind of commitment, I say I represent, and this has to do with the eschatological point, I say I represent the Tonto principle of Christian ethics. One time the Lone Ranger and Tonto were surrounded by 60,000 Sioux in the Dakotas. And the Lone Ranger looked over to Tonto and said, "This looks pretty tough, Tonto. What do you think we ought to do?" And he said, "What do you mean, we white man?" Now we Christians have made a lot out of being white. And it's about time we learn that we have quite a different identity in the world in which we find ourselves.
You clearly don't mean by your admonitions to nonviolence being passive.
Oh, I hate the language of pacifism. It's just so passive. I don't. I don't like the language of nonviolence either. You're not something. I like the language of peace much better. Even more, I like when people. I taught the core course in Christian ethics at Duke for many years, and I would start the course with I'd tell the kids that one, I don't teach to help them make up their own minds because they don't have minds worth making up until I've trained them. I know that sounds authoritarian, but it at least saves you from Target, where you think you have a choice because you have a choice between Sony and Panasonic. I mean, but I would tell the kids that if they needed an ethics course to make them moral, it's too late. They're already too corrupt. I can't do anything for them. But I was going to tell them all they needed to know in 2 seconds about what they needed to know to live well. And I asked them to get out paper and pencil and write it down. Don't lie. Don't lie. Now, think about what that does to marriage, because people never lie to one another more readily than they do in marriage, where they're trying desperately to save the love that has gone out. How do you tell one another the truth in a world of mendacity? It's not easy, and you're going to need all the help you can get. And the name that help should take is called the Church of Jesus Christ, where people go because they're desperate to be told who they are truthfully.
Mr. Stanley Hauerwas.